Hi, I'm China Gona, and I'm here today with Gen Z Chinese comedian Corinna Yee. Hi,
Hello.
Corinna.
Hi, nice to see you. How are you?
Good. So, Corinna and I have known each other for a while. We actually took a comedy writing class together, and she is a really good writer. I think, I think people always think of comedians as performers first, but really we're writers first, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think in our instructor in that class mentioned that for some people writing comes more naturally and performance, and for other people performance comes more naturally. But yeah, I think as a kid I was pretty shy, so maybe I wasn't the most outgoing person. So I think I built my comedy chops up first by writing and just imitating how I think people talked.
Have you always been a writer then?
I think I didn't really think of myself as a writer, but I was a good writer. Even in school, I was the best at English and history, and I just was more naturally geared towards that. I was one of those Asian kids that wasn't good at math and science, so I've always yeah, I've always enjoyed telling stories and just like analyzing things in a written form. So I think yeah, that's what drew me to comedy before. I mean, initially.
So how old were you when you wrote your first joke? Do you remember?
I think I've always been kind of writing jokes, but I think the first time it was more in a stand-up form was probably junior, senior year of high school. I remember I performed my first comedy set at a talent show senior year of high school, and I did impressions of my teachers, and so that got a big laugh, of course. And then right after that, I went to college, and we had a stand-up club there, so I was performing and opening for like our guest comedians and things like that. So that's where I was able to build up my chops, I think.
So you were interested in stand up pretty young. Is there a reason why? Was there a comedian that your parents loved or how did you get introduced to it?
Yeah, definitely. I've since for as long as I can remember, I grew up watching Seinfeld. Like I was watching Seinfeld at a way too young of an age. Um, and at the beginning of every episode, Jerry Seinfeld's doing a set. So I think I was always used to just seeing someone with a microphone. I didn't know that that was a genre called stand-up comedy, but I just saw a guy with a microphone
Okay.
talking, making observations, and then of course the show itself is hilarious. So I've always been around humor, and both of my parents have a really good sense of humor and watch a lot of TV. So I think I was just kind of always around that.
So I think you're either the youngest, you're definitely one of the youngest comedians that will be on the Soy Saucy show. That is Sunday, September 7th at the Crow in Santa Monica. Tickets at soysaucy.com.
Woo.
Anyway, so you're you're one of the younger ones, but you kind of have a social life that is maybe different from the rest of your peers. Can you tell us about that?
So you're telling me all of my friends are old, is what you're saying?
I wasn't saying anything. I'm simply saying, tell me about your social life,
Well, I was gonna
Corinna.
say, my friends are old when even I have what you're Gen Xer.
Uh huh.
When I have a Gen Xer telling me my friends are old, because normally like my friends, they just see my millennial friends and they're like, "You're friends with all old people, Corinna." But man, I got China Gona telling me I have old friends. But yeah, no, I've always been because my parents are older, and I think just I've been around people who are just older and more mature, and so I think I just gravitated towards that. And comedy, especially at this stage, is usually filled with people who are getting into it a little later in life, because usually you fall into comedy after having been through something like traumatic or something that just is very life changing. And I haven't obviously lived enough life, and so sometimes I do struggle with that when I'm writing bits. Is like, oh, I haven't
Mm.
experienced this yet, and there are a lot of bits that comedians do that I can't really relate to because I haven't experienced it yet. So, but yeah, somehow I think because I got into comedy or have been watching comedy since a very young age, I think I just developed that palette earlier than some other people in the business, I guess.
It seems like you have quite an ear for it, but I get it. Like when I wrote comedy when I was in my 20s, it was a lot harder. And now it's
Mm,
just like my daily life is comedy. So
right.
it's very different experience. But you still didn't touch very much on your friends.
My friends. I like sometimes I kind of I think I'm in that transition period because I graduated from college 2 years ago. So I've obviously was living with like my friends all the time and socializing with them. And then I'm gradually learning what it's like to have adult friends where you're not constantly on top of each other all the time, and just meet up for a beer every now and then, maybe once a month, and just chat things out. So I've been lucky to meet some pretty good friends in the stand-up world, some of whom have already been on your podcast. Peter Murphy, he's been really kind, and he's been kind of a mentor to me. Tom Tran is another person who's given me a lot of good pointers and giving me opportunities. So I think it's really valuable to be friends with people who are older than you and have, more experience in the business to be able to steer you towards what it is that you want.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you're an East Coaster living in Los Angeles. How do you feel about that? How's that experience?
I like it. I think the East Coast is very fast paced all the time, and then the West Coast is more laid back. So I like being an East Coaster on the West Coast because it puts me ahead of all of you lazy MFs. But I
Like
mean,
you're
the
always
longer I'm
3
at,
hours ahead.
exactly. So I think like the longer I'm on the West Coast, the more I enjoy it. But I am very much an East Coaster. Like I notice even when I'm crossing the street out in LA, like people, as soon as the light turns green, I'm already ahead of the crosswalk. I'm already halfway across the street. Everyone else is looking on their phones, and I'm like, don't you have somewhere to be? Like, don't you want to walk like 30 miles an hour all the time? So.
So it's interesting because Corinna and I share an ethnicity, but we've had very different lived experiences, both because, I come from an interracial marriage. I'm a West Coaster, you're an East Coaster, our generations. And then you have an added descriptor that has made your experience very different. Can you tell us about that, please?
Which one? That I am 5'3" or
That you were
I don't know.
raised Jewish.
I was. I don't even know if raised is the right word, but I just was, I guess you could say, it wasn't necessarily raised by my parents, but just like raised by the community. My parents sent me to the Jewish day school when I was 5 years old. So that was my first intro into education, was through a Jewish lens. And so for the first 6 years of my schooling, I was going to Jewish day school with all these other Jewish kids. But I think I didn't realize it in the moment, but in hindsight, I realized that there were a lot of similarities between Chinese and Jewish culture, which I think is why my parents were drawn to that type of education. There's a emphasis on education and honoring your elders, and an inability to digest dairy. So, yeah.
Well, that's pretty shared across the Asian world, right?
Right, exactly.
Lactose intolerance.
Yeah. So, I think just from the education that I got at that Jewish day school really set me up for just always questioning things, and I think that's a huge part of comedy. And the comedy world is also full of Jewish people, so I think that's also why I'm drawn to it, is because it's kind of like these inside jokes that we have, this language that we're able to speak with each other. And so I think being people think that was it hard being like a Chinese kid at Jewish day school, but I think having that exposure and being able to learn and write Hebrew and learn about this whole other world of religion at such a young age, I think is what made me curious about the world and what set me up to be interested in diverse backgrounds, and why I was drawn to a show like Soy Saucy. So just being curious about different worlds at a young age, I think is what set me up for success in some ways.
Just really quick tech thing. Can you hold your mic away from your collar a little bit? There's a little bit of brushing sound happening.
Yeah, sounds good.
Oh yeah, that's so much better. Okay, great. So what topics do you like to write about? What makes you stand up on stage? And
again, I'm only 24, so I haven't lived that much life, and I'm kind of a goody two shoes, so I don't get myself into too much trouble. So I tend to write a lot about my parents. I'm pretty close to my parents. And they're both professors, so they're very intellectual people. But as I said, they're both have a great sense of humor. So I think they're a lot of inspiration for not only just the jokes that I write, but the way that I think about the world. Also, just write about typical Gen Z things, dating especially, and then dating as a Gen Zer who is both Asian and Jewish, and just trying to navigate these different worlds that I'm constantly kind of floating between.
What I like about your dating stuff, though, is that it's not the usual like swiping on Tinder stuff. Like you have some really funny things. Like you went on a first date that ended up at McDonald's or something, and
right? The guy suggested that we split a McChicken. Not my own. I don't get my own McChicken. We have to split a McChicken. I don't know if he wanted to do like a Lady and the Tramp situation, but he wanted to share this like $3 sandwich and then go rock climbing. And I'm not a very athletic person either. And but I was also on my period, and I have this joke where going rock climbing on your period, ladies will know that that is like putting a hat on a hat when it comes to being in a terrible situation. So it was already just like the McChicken just sounded, miles better than having to go rock climbing, whether you're on or off your period. So yeah, I've run into like really different situations. And some of those situations, the bit writes itself. I
Yeah.
barely had to plug in any jokes. I just had to tell that story because it is
Right.
so ridiculous.
Splitting a McChicken on your
Yeah,
first date.
right.
And I noticed it looks like you had your hair cut recently. I think that's something that happens whenever you go home. Is that correct? Am I remembering
It
that
is.
correctly?
Yeah, I am very cheap, and my dad happens to be excellent at cutting hair, and so he cuts both my hair and my mom's hair, and we have the same haircut. So I don't like sit in the chair and then, point to whichever celebrity whose haircut I want. I just say, "Oh, give me my mother's haircut." And I come out looking like this. I come out with a fresh bob and usually fresh material, so it works out.
Oh, what's the material that you came out of with this haircut?
Just more stuff about Ireland. I was on a trip recently. I just got back from Ireland 2 days ago, and I was on a tour with 100-year-olds. It was a 55 plus tour, and
Wait a
being
second, wait a second. 100, 100 years old? Seriously? Or
yeah,
just like close to 100? Were they
it felt like
literally?
that. Based
Okay.
on the way that they use WhatsApp, like you can tell these people, this is the greatest generation. Yelling at each other, telling them not to text past 9 p.m. because some of them have their ringers on. Clearly, greatest generation did not learn about do not disturb, which is, completely fine.
Wow, they
Yeah.
are techie. My grandma never got into the whole chatting thing. Email, she's 101. Email was barely email. Like we could email her photographs. That was pretty much it. So these
That's
people
how it
sound
should be.
techie.
That's how it should be. I think an old woman should not know how to use email. Whenever I see like an 85-year-old using like FaceTime, it's like an oxymoron. It's weird.
Well, also there's a point at which technology, I feel like, can become really dangerous just with
Mm,
all of the scams out there, even from as simple as, you scan the wrong QR code to pay for parking, and all of a sudden, you have all these things on your phone that weren't supposed to be there, or they have access to your identity. And it's like, at what point do we take phones away from people?
right. And old people love money, so it's so easy for them to just like give their bank account, expect to get $50,000, So yeah, I got to be careful with that.
Yeah, ugh, I'm that bridge is approaching. I'm not
You feel it?
looking
You
forward
are,
to
are
it.
you heading to those days soon? Is that what you're
Not for
saying?
me. I'm
Oh,
talking about
okay.
for my, I'm not gonna say anything in case it ends up in her inbox. But yeah, I'm concerned about my ancestors, or
I
not
see.
my still living ancestors, I guess I should say. So let's see. Gen Z, Chinese, Jewish, East Coaster. Is there anything else that you and your parents? Those are the big four in terms of the things that you talk about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm severely close to my parents. Like anyone who knows me for like 5 seconds knows about my parents, and I wish they talked about me that much, but it's fine.
I think it's interesting how you say you're severely close to them.
Yeah.
Like you're going to cut yourself. You're so close to them. Like why severe?
I mean, I think we share things with each other, that like there are some things that I'm more comfortable talking about. I mean, I guess this is how it should be, but I think you should be more comfortable talking to your parents than you should be talking on stage. But I think there's like
Mm. Yeah.
there's no boundary. Like I'm still in my mother's womb at this point. Oh, that's the other thing is I guess that's the other identity that we could talk about is me being adopted, which is another
Oh,
weird
yes.
thing,
Yes, yes, yes.
given that my parents are Chinese, but I was born in mainland China, and I was
Mhm.
adopted by these Chinese people. So which is good because I didn't have an identity crisis, unlike a lot of
Right.
other people who were racially or transracially adopted. But
How
that's been
often does
also
that
good fun
happen?
material. Transracial adoption.
Well, I guess what do you know, is there a percentage of Chinese children who are adopted by ethnically Chinese people? Do you know?
Honestly, I'm the only one, but unless you're in the country of China, I'm the only person in America that I know that was adopted by Chinese parents. Usually, because, with the one child
Yeah.
policy, a lot of children that were adopted and brought to the US, like their parents are different ethnicity or different
Right.
race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're the only person. I know lots of Vietnamese people who were adopted by non-Vietnamese people during the evacuation that
Right.
happened in Vietnam, but not Chinese.
Yeah.
And, you know, your age specifically is that one child rule
Right.
thing. So interesting.
Yeah, so
And
maybe I'm severely attached to my parents because I have like abandonment issues or something. I think like maybe
how
it's
old
like
were
a
you when you
that's
were adopted?
I mean, I was like 16 months, but you know, maybe it's like one of those things where it's like a movie and it's like and it goes back into my past life and write the script right now. Where's Spielberg, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, 16 months is old enough that you probably experienced some stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah. I
You know,
mean,
it's never too early to start emotionally damaging someone, you know. It's beautiful.
that's pretty much how our world is set up. It's like,
Right.
yes, we will emotionally damage you, guaranteed.
Yeah. And then that's why
Oh,
we have the stand-up world, the beautiful world of stand-up.
yes. Yes. Definitely to vent our frustrations and all the things we go through. I do really enjoy, you know, for people who are maybe interested in doing stand up at some point, you know, you find a community of people. You might be going to like the same open mics regularly and you see the same people, and it really does become a community and you help each other. You know, some of us are open to helping each other work on stuff. Some people don't want feedback, which is cool too. But it does, you know, it starts to become as much about the community as about, oh, my jokes that I need to go up and say,
Right.
which I had a bunch last Friday, and then something happened. I ended up not being able to go to my open mic as scheduled. Now I'm like, wait, what was I going to talk about? Now I don't even know. So, well, thank you so much for joining me. I am really looking forward to Soy Saucy #2. And for people who are able to come see us in Los Angeles, it's at the Crow, which is an amazing location. Have you been there yet?
I haven't, but I think this goes back to what we were talking about with like community. I think stand up, one of the best things about stand up is that it is for everyone and it's never too late to join. And I think the Crow is an example of that. It really
Absolutely.
welcomes everybody, especially a place with that has a lot of comedians with intersecting identities. So I think the Crow was the perfect choice for doing the second Soy Saucy yet.
Yeah, and the owner there, she's a comedian, mother, Nicole Blaine. She actually also is running something called like hysterectomy, and it's for women who've had traumatic experiences around birth and fertility and all of that. And it can be a very healing experience to get your, you know, story on paper and maybe you perform it. But yes, the Crow's great. They're actually officially a nonprofit. They really are all about helping people, you know, share their truth, which is a form of medicine. So the Crow's great. And it's also a great facility. It's, you know, it's a nice big building. They have tons of free parking, which in LA is, you know, key. And they even have a subway stop like right next to them, a train stop. So if you want to take public transpo to get there, you can. So go to soysaucy.com, get tickets. We will sell out, and we're only doing the show quarterly. And honestly, I don't know if we're going to do #3 in 2025 just because we're coming up on the holidays so fast. So
Right.
#3 might not even be till 2026. So come out, see us. I'm so excited about this lineup. And thank you for joining us, Corinna.
Thank you, China.